Welcome to Dusty Little Wastelanders, written by L.L. Smith, narrated by L.L. Smith. Chapter 8, Setting the Trap. The morning of the next day was here, and K2 and I were mopping away at the bathroom stalls. There was far less vomit this time around, just pools of blood, like a knife strike fest had just gone down right here in the bathroom. It struck me how odd these folk acted in a bathroom. They were all such outstanding citizens on the outside. When dining, they'd pass as civil people. But here in the bathroom was a whole new side of them exposed. Masses of vomit on the first day, lines of urine that had missed its target on the second, and now enough blood to suggest some sort of slaughter. "So who do you think got in a knife fight back here?" K2 asked while his blood-stained mop soaked up more crimson. "I bet that fellow with the straw cap got into it with the self-proclaimed fisherman," I wagered. "That's a solid theory," K2 confirmed. "I saw the straw cap guy leave after getting out of the bathroom. I bet he went to the medical station after that." "The question that remains is why did the self-proclaimed fisherman get all stabby with Straw Hat Man?" I asked. "I have no idea on that one," K2 announced. "Self-proclaimed fisherman has a history of being a violent drunk." "He was pretty washed out yesterday," I added. "You know, Enry," K2 perked up, "maybe we should give up wastelanding and become detectives." "Oh yeah," I joked. "I can see it now, the sloppy sleuths." I gestured the title with my hands. "Yeah, and just like now I'd do all the work." I turned a curious expression over to K2. "Oh, was that so?" I teased. "Well then, I don't even know what I'm doing here." I slapped my mop into my bucket and steered it away. "Hey, hold up," K2 called out. "No, that's okay," I waved. "You finish up, I'll collect the pay." "You're a pain, Enry," K2 scoffed. I left the bathroom with every intention of barreling back in within a few seconds, but my eyes were caught by an individual at a dining table. TJ sat alone at a table, still wearing that skimpy vest and short pants and still barefoot. He had 3 rabbits on the table chowing on some carrots, chowing and pooping most likely. And who'd have to clean up all that poop? K2, of course. He does do all the work after all. I let out a grin. I marched up to TJ at his lonely table. It was easy enough to assume that it was me he was waiting on. He was caught off guard by my sudden presence. I scraped a chair from the table and sat on it. TJ studied me scooting in closer. He looked around through the crowd before leaning in to address me. "We have to scout out the manor before our freedom mission," TJ announced. "Okay," I said. "I'm waiting for one of my associates," he whispered. "She's more familiar with this kind of work, and she has the insight of how to get some passes for the auction." "Passes?" I asked. "Yeah," TJ retorted with an almost irritated tone. "You need a pass to get into the auction. That's pretty common knowledge. Have you done any research into the auction on your own end?" "Well, no," I said. "But I only just learned that we'd be breaking into it yesterday." "If I were you, I'd get on that." "I intend to." TJ's attention was lost. His head turned over to the entrance. A woman came walking in. She had to be his associate. She wore just as ragged and revealing clothing as he did. She wore a torn-up top that dropped just before her breasts. Her entire pale tummy was exposed. Her shredded shorts were just long enough to cover her cheeks. Her feet were also bare. Apparently TJ and associates had something against shoes. She heaved 2 piglets in her arms. Our table had become a regular petting zoo. Between the pig's grunts and the rabbit's paw pattering, I was just waiting for Esther to kick us out. "Hello, I'm Olivia." The pig lady let out a hand. "I'm Enry," I said, meeting her with a handshake. Olivia joined TJ and me at the table, and it was time for us to start scheming. "I'm sure TJ already told you about the importance of scooping out that manor and infiltrating it?" Olivia asked. "Yeah," I said. "We were just talking about that, actually." "Good," Olivia clasped her hands. "We'll need as many people as we can get involved in this mission." "Well, I'll be coming along for sure," I said. "I can get K2 easy enough, but Donald won't be willing to leave Monica for this, and TM can't leave this bar." "Well, if these are the only ones who can make it, then that'll have to do," Olivia said. "TJ had mentioned that you knew how to get us some passes for this auction," I asked. "Yeah," Olivia answered. "I have a friend who works in the registration tent, and she said she can get her hands on some passes, but they won't be free." "How much?" I asked. "20 a pass," Olivia said. "I can do that, but I didn't want to." "How about you go get K2 and we can get this started?" TJ asked. I took TJ's advice, and with a head nod I practically leapt out from my seat, all too eager to leave that animal farm. My feet wandered back into the bathroom where I'd left K2. He was startled by my return. "I'm sorry, Enry," K2 said. "I didn't mean to hurt your feelings." It took me a second to remember what he was referencing. "Don't apologize," I said. "If I can't handle the truth, then I should change it." I ran into TJ and his informant Olivia in the dining room. "They want us to scoop out the manor before infiltration." "Oh," K2 explained. "Heck yeah." He pumped his fist into the air. K2 hit his mopping bucket in the last stall and followed me out of the bathroom. We were back out and in the dining area in no time. It was easy to spot the only table with an animal collection. I turned back to K2 to read his face. He shared the same level of astonishment I'd had at first glance. I gave K2 a nudge with my elbow. You know you get to clean up all their poop, Mr. I do all the work. It isn't funny when you use it against me, K2 rolled his eyes. Why are these people so weird? Who brings pigs and rabbits to an eating joint? K2 asked. Unless they're on the menu, of course, I giggled. K2 joined in. We reached the table and I didn't bother taking my seat. This is K2. K2, this is Olivia. I introduced the stranger, then motioned toward the door. Esther had been mighty patient with these animal freaks, but I was anxious to get him out of here. TJ collected 2 of his 3 rabbits and turned my way. I reckon he read my face and turned back to K2. Do you mind carrying this one? TJ asked. Sure, K2 obliged. How did you get that thing in here if you can't carry it? I sneaked. TJ ignored my comment and carried his rabbits ahead of us. He and Olivia guided us to the manor. K2 rushed up to catch up to me. He slowed down when he met my side and kept giving that damn rabbit a nice petting. We need to stay on their good side, Enry, K2 said, more seriously than usual. They're our best bet at getting Kyle back. I know, I scoffed, but they don't have to make it so damn hard. Just be ready for when this is all over, and you get to tell Kyle all about these crazy rabbit piglet people. I gave that a good giggle. I looked at K2, whose expression depressed me some. What's aching on your mind, I asked. I'm just worried, K2 asked. Once we get Kyle back, will you be leaving? Not right away, I assured him. We can't stay here. It isn't a wastelander's way. All the torturous memories in Hillville isn't financially feasible for an unregistered citizen. All that, and I still haven't touched the issues of TM's attempted abductions. We can't hide him in Esther's bar forever. We need to find a place to stay where people aren't obsessed with nabbing or nibbling on children. I get that, K2 moped. TM deserves a better childhood. His illustrations and silence are evidence of the abundance he's already suffered. We'll be around for a bit, I said. I need you to meet Kyle, and you could always come with us when we leave. I was starting to sound like Kyle, trying to recruit new folks. But K2 was my folk, and that was special. You think Kyle and I will get along? K2 asked. Well, of course, I slapped K2 on the back. You two are so alike. That seemed to pump K2 up with good feelings. We followed the rest of the way to the manor. Its immense white structure reached closer with each step. Its gold trim glared against the sun. The immaculate lawn was the next detail I noticed. We closed in on the gated property, and Olivia took us to the right of the structure. The slave quarters were on the right of the manor. To the left was a massive flower garden. All the guards and slaves were working in the garden today. I bet that was a relief for all the slaves. To go from moving, trimming, and re-graveling to watering? Under more regular circumstances, watering flowers would be considered an enjoyable hobby. There was a bland grass field behind the slave quarters. It seemed as though this would be the focus of the day. Olivia put down her piglets and looked into the field. This is where the auction will be held, she said. It's held in the same place every year, TJ explained. I saw Ronnie Manilli in town yesterday, Olivia explained. Who? I asked. Come on, Enry, K2 scoffed. Even I know Ronnie Manilli. He's a famous auctioneer from the capital. People get famous for doing something this despicable? I scoffed. Well, it isn't well known that he hosts slave trade auctions, K2 clarified. I don't care too much for who'll be attending this auction, I said. What I do need to know is how I'll get Kyle back. For starters, Richard McDougal will double his guard staff on this day, Olivia said, going from his regular 20 guards usually to around 50. Do they have firing pistols, I asked. No, TJ confirmed. Richard McDougal is plenty rich enough to afford arming his guards, but firing pistols are much too hard to come by for even him to acquire. It's sad a bulk of the firearms in the wastelands are all tied up in Moontown's crime syndicate. I know a thing or two about that, I chuckled. You visited Moontown's crime syndicate? K2 asked. Just passed through, I recalled. Anyway, Olivia redirected us, the guards may not have guns, but they do have numbers, and you won't be able to fight off 50 men, even if you had a firing pistol. It's crucial that you all remain undetected. Does Richard McDougal work with the law enforcement at all? K2 asked. Like, would we be more worried about lawful punishment or McDougal's own sense of justice? Richard McDougal is hosting a slave auction, TJ confirmed. No, he doesn't work closely with law enforcement here in Hillville. He just pays his dues, and the officers pretend not to notice the biggest event in town. Getting caught will be a death sentence then, I said. I saw the nerves in K2's face as the severity of this mission sunk in. Hey there, what's up? LL Smith here. Thank you so much for enjoying my audiobook. I'm going to interrupt you real quick and say, if you get real anxious to hear what happens next and just can't wait till next week, or if you get the urge to just support such a stunning, ruggedly handsome, and awesome independent creator such as myself, I encourage you highly to go follow the link in the description and support the official release. Thank you so much for listening, and let's jump right back into that story. It had sunk in the moment of Kyle's capture for me, but K2 hadn't been there for that. I wouldn't blame him if these preparations gave him cold feet. TM's inclusion in this mission was beginning to feel misplaced as well. My comfort with putting a 5-year-old in this kind of danger was waning. We'd come to the manor to scope things out, but there was only so much to see. At the end of the day, the events would come down to our actions on that day. "What do you think?" Olivia said. "About?" I asked. "Our chances of making our plan work." "I don't know," I scoffed. "All I have is a plan and a place. Too little to go on to feel confident, honestly." "I know it's a lot to consider," TJ said, "but my affiliates and I have experience with these sorts of things. One of our members was a former heistman. Olivia grew up on the farmlands, a place notorious for its use of slave labor, and thanks to my father, I have deep connections with Moontown's drug trade. You're in the best possible hands." TJ's assurance only made me feel so much better. I looked back to K2. TJ's words had rebuilt his confidence, at least. My confidence remained dashed until I could get Kyle back. But for the sake of the mission and those who helped me, I had to feign some level of confidence. I hoped that if I faked it well enough, then it'd just come to me naturally. "Well, I've got to meet up with my connection for your passes," Olivia announces. "I want you to know I'm putting out for these passes, so you better pay up." She gave me a firm finger wave before heaving her piglets back under her arms. I met her stare with a puzzled expression. I had nothing to say. "I'm kidding," Olivia cracked a smile. "I wouldn't do that just to help some random guy get into an auction." Olivia proceeded to leave the way she came, and I scratched at my scalp. Her humor messied my thoughts. "Do you have any questions about the rescue before committing to it?" TJ asked. "How long do these things usually last?" K2 asked. "About 3 hours," TJ answered. "It mostly depends on the amount of contraband they have to auction off." Contraband, I thought to myself. It was such a normal thing for people to be regarded as things within this community. I'm sure TJ had unknowingly become numb to that sort of thought process. But I knew who was being auctioned off, and I knew their humanity, and I refused to view anyone trapped in this situation as anything short of a human victim. "Enry," TJ asked, "do you have a question?" "How directly involved in the auction is Richard McDougal?" I asked. "He doesn't have too much of a direct involvement. He usually just watches from his balcony." TJ pointed to the spot on the manor's 3rd floor that looked over the empty field. The balcony was railed off by some golden oaks, but there was a cushioned chair, small glass table with a beverage resting on it, and a butler tending to these things. I just somehow knew that man up there wasn't McDougal. He didn't make my blood boil, but I wish it were. I wanted to get a good look at the man I planned to kill. "Well," TJ started, "if you haven't got any more questions, I'll be heading home." "I'm good," I said. "Do you want your rabbit back?" K2 asked, still holding the fluffy creature. TJ snagged the rabbit from K2's hands and lugged him under his arm like one of Olivia's piglets. He headed back towards the shanties behind the mansion, and K2 and I turned toward the bar. "Are you still comfortable with this mission?" I asked K2. "I was never comfortable with it," K2 clarified, "but I want to help you, and I want to help your brother." "Thanks." That's all I could think to say. "Thank you, Enry," K2 corrected. "You're the first person to care about me. I mean, Esther cares, but that's different. More like a parent who's obligated to care. You're the first stranger who's found it in them to care about me." K2 was digging into his past. I could feel it. He didn't talk much about his time in the capital. I imagined it was unpleasant to remember, given the fact that he'd chosen to run away from it. Now he walked down these dusty trails, and he'd chosen to dump it all on me. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't Kyle. My words were never good with the mushy stuff. I just kept on walking and continued to allow him to pour his heart out. An ear seemed to be just as useful a tool for him in that moment than anything else. "My dad was rarely home, and my mother hardly noticed me," K2 continued. "My older brother and sister were something they could be proud of, but me, I was a dud. That's why I left. I wasn't going to drag them down anymore, nor was I going to allow them to drag me down." K2 continued as we walked back to Esther's bar. End of Chapter 8.